In today's video, we're looking at 5 of the most disturbing bear attacks ever recorded, from a wildlife expert's fatal mistake in salmon-filled waters to a cyclist trapped between 2 apex predators. But first we begin in a peaceful Colorado neighborhood where nothing looked wrong until it was far too late. It was June 14, 2016, when the mountain silence of Aspen's exclusive Starwood neighborhood was shattered by a scream that would echo through the valley long after the last search helicopter departed. Maris Klein had never intended to become a nanny. The 24-year-old art history graduate from the University of Denver had moved to Aspen 6 months earlier for creative inspiration. The Bellamy family had hired her part-time to watch their 3-year-old son, Noah. Noah Bellamy was a typical toddler, curious and energetic. His parents, Marcus and Elena Bellamy, had installed security cameras throughout the property, but viewed them more as theft deterrents than safety necessities. That morning, Maris had prepared lunch in the outdoor kitchen and, distracted by Noah's demands for attention, had left the trash enclosure gate propped open with a wooden wedge. American black bears, despite their name, range in color from cinnamon to jet black and can weigh between 200 and 600 pounds, with adult males commonly exceeding 300 pounds during summer months, particularly when fattening up on high-calorie food sources in preparation for winter. Their jaws are capable of crushing bone, and their curved claws can grow up to 4 inches long, allowing them to climb trees with ease, dig for roots and insects, and tear apart carcasses or human-made food sources. Security footage later revealed that a large male black bear had been circling the property for nearly 20 minutes before the attack, drawn by the scent of discarded food scraps. The bear approached cautiously, pausing frequently to test the air and scan for threats, behavior typical of a food-conditioned bear assessing human presence. Noah played contentedly with his dump truck near the patio's edge, while Maris sat 15 feet away on a lounge chair on her phone. Black bears have an acute sense of smell, estimated to be 7 times more sensitive than a bloodhound, which allows them to detect food from miles away, and their hearing is similarly acute. Unlike grizzlies, black bears typically avoid human contact, but food conditioning, habituation to human activity, or proximity to residential areas can override natural avoidance behaviors, occasionally leading to opportunistic or predatory attacks on small children, pets, or unattended food. During summer months, males become increasingly bold as they seek high-calorie foods to build fat stores for hibernation, which can heighten aggression if they perceive competition or threat. The bear emerged from the tree line at 2:47 p.m., as shown on the security footage, moving with deliberate purpose toward the open trash enclosure. Its massive frame, later estimated by wildlife officers to weigh approximately 320 pounds, crossed the lawn with surprising quiet. Noah remained focused on his toys, unaware of the approaching animal, while Maris continued to stare at her phone screen. What happened next unfolded with terrifying speed. The bear abandoned the garbage and moved directly toward Noah, covering the 30-foot distance in less than 3 seconds. The child looked up just as the bear's massive head filled his field of vision. The bear initially swiped Noah by the upper torso, knocking him off balance. Noah screamed once, flailing, before the bear repositioned its jaws to grip the shoulder and upper chest. Maris looked up from her phone just as the bear turned away from the camera, Noah's motionless body hanging from its jaws. She dropped her phone and stumbled backward, falling over the lounge chair as the bear disappeared into the tree line with its prey, moving with the efficient gait of an animal retreating to cover. The entire incident, from first contact to disappearance into the woods, lasted less than 15 seconds. Maris's 911 call was placed at 2:48 p.m., her voice fragmented and panicked as she struggled to describe what she had just witnessed. Emergency responders arrived within 7 minutes, but the bear had already vanished deeper into the surrounding forest. Colorado Parks and wildlife officers, assisted by tracking dogs, followed the blood trail and disturbed vegetation for nearly 250 yards before discovering Noah's remains partially cached under a dense thicket of oak brush. The child had suffered catastrophic trauma to the head, neck, and upper chest. The coroner's preliminary findings concluded that death occurred almost immediately due to severe cranial fractures and catastrophic cervical spine injuries, with additional trauma consistent with bear predation, including claw marks along the shoulders and partial consumption of soft tissue. The bear was located and euthanized later that evening using thermal imaging equipment, found less than half a mile from the attack site. Necropsy testing confirmed the presence of human tissue, definitively identifying the animal responsible. The incident received minimal media coverage at the family's request, though it prompted stricter bear management enforcement throughout the Roaring Fork Valley. The Bellamys quietly settled civil matters involving Maris and sold their property within 3 months. Yet even as the Colorado mountains fell silent after the toddler's tragedy, in Alaska, a massive brown bear decided the salmon weren't the only thing on the menu when a biologist ventures too close. It was August 17, 2014, when the pristine waters of Karluk River in Alaska turned crimson, transforming a routine scientific mission into a feeding frenzy that would be captured in horrifying detail by cameras meant to document nature's beauty. Dr. Elias Morek had spent 23 years studying salmon population dynamics in Alaska, earning a reputation for patience, precision, and a willingness to work closer to active wildlife corridors than most of his peers considered advisable. Morek had joined a small documentary crew filming the annual salmon run, assisting with sensor placement and habitat interpretation. The crew followed standard bear safety briefings, carried deterrents, and maintained visual awareness. But Morek advocated for a closer camera angle along a narrow rock shelf, where salmon concentrated during low water. He believed the placement would maximize usable data without requiring prolonged human presence. The Karluk River cut through dense coastal wilderness, its banks slick with algae and churned mud from thousands of spawning salmon. Kodiak brown bears, coastal brown bears genetically similar to grizzlies, frequently exceeded 800 pounds. And during salmon runs, they fed almost continuously, becoming highly food-focused but far less tolerant of sudden movement or intrusion at close range. Wildlife authorities had issued multiple seasonal advisories noting heavy bear concentrations along the river. These advisories did not prohibit research activity, but emphasized distance, line of sight, and minimizing time spent near active fishing lanes. Morek acknowledged the warnings, but believed the crew's limited exposure window reduced risk. The documentary team had positioned their primary camera on the riverbank, capturing wide shots of the salmon run while Morek worked in the water approximately 40 feet upstream. Multiple bears were visible in the footage, including the massive male that local guides had noted, a dark-furred giant estimated at over 950 pounds. The bear had been fishing successfully near the weir for over an hour, showing no apparent concern for the human activity nearby. Morek, focused on adjusting a malfunctioning sensor, waded deeper into the current than originally planned. In doing so, he inadvertently blocked the bear's most direct avenue of retreat back to the alder thicket on the bank. The attack began when Morek lost his footing on algae-slicked rocks. The sudden, uncontrolled movement and splash was the final trigger. The bear turned with surprising speed, covering the distance in 3 powerful strides through the knee-deep water. Its initial impact was a massive swat and crushing bite to Morek's left hip and thigh, the force driving the scientist sideways into the water. The muffled sound of breaking bone was captured faintly by the camera's high-gain microphone over the rush of the river. The water around them erupted in foam and blood as the bear's jaws secured Morek briefly, but the violent contact lasted only 5 to 10 seconds before the bear released him. The scientist's arms flailed briefly before Morek sank beneath the current, drowning with internal trauma from the initial crushing bite. The current carried Morek's lifeless body 10 yards downstream before it became snagged on a submerged logjam near the weir structure. Rather than returning immediately to calm feeding, the bear retreated several yards downstream to the bank, pacing and scanning before resuming fishing only after Morek's body was out of immediate reach. The documentary crew's radio call for emergency evacuation went out at 2:34 p.m., but their remote location on Kodiak Island meant that help was over an hour away by helicopter. When the Coast Guard helicopter finally arrived, Morek had been dead for nearly 20 minutes, his body temperature already dropping in the frigid Alaskan water. The coroner's findings documented massive trauma consistent with a large bear attack, a single crushing bite to the pelvis and torso, compound fractures to the legs, and fatal internal injuries combined with drowning. The documentary footage, deemed too graphic for public release, was turned over to wildlife authorities. The Karluk River Sensor Program was suspended indefinitely, leaving future salmon research to rely on less precise but safer remote monitoring methods for the foreseeable future. As the Alaskan waters ran red with the biologist's blood, in the forests of Russia, an unemployed mechanic's years of drunken wrestling matches with his pet bear were about to end with one final, fatal round. It was October 23, 2017, when the cramped courtyard of a Perm Cry apartment complex became the stage for a brutal demonstration of why wild animals, no matter how familiar, remain fundamentally untamed predators capable of turning deadly in an instant. Sergei Volkov had been unemployed for 8 months, his skills as a diesel mechanic rendered obsolete by factory closures. The 39-year-old had found purpose and a measure of local notoriety through his unusual relationship with Zeka, a 400-pound Eurasian brown bear he had illegally raised from a cub after finding it orphaned 6 years earlier. What started as genuine affection had evolved into a dangerous dependency on the status his local VK page afforded him in his declining town. His neighbors had grown accustomed to his rituals. That evening, Sergei had been drinking vodka with 3 friends inside the dacha, boasting about his latest video idea, while Zeka dozed in the heavily modified, concrete-floored kennel structure at the rear of the overgrown property. Eurasian brown bears are among the largest terrestrial predators, with adult males reaching weights of 660 pounds and possessing bite forces exceeding 1,200 pounds per square inch. Despite their bulky appearance, these bears can reach speeds of 35 miles per hour and possess the strength to drag prey weighing several hundred pounds over considerable distances. As evening approached, Sergei's friends encouraged him to film another wrestling video. Sergei unlocked Zeka's enclosure and led the bear into the weedy clearing, where one friend positioned himself with a smartphone. The bear initially seemed calm, allowing Sergei to grab its massive head in a mock hold. However, Sergei's coordination was severely compromised by alcohol, and his movements became increasingly rough. The fatal moment came when Sergei, attempting to climb onto Zeka's back in a drunken display, lost his balance. He fell heavily sideways, his full weight and a sharp, protruding belt buckle driving into the bear's ribcage. The bear's demeanor shifted instantly from tolerant to explosively defensive, a reflexive response to sudden, sharp pain from a familiar source. Zeka's ears flattened, and a deep roar erupted as it positioned itself over Sergei's prone form. It pressed its full weight onto his chest, delivering a crushing bite to the upper torso that immediately incapacitated him. The bear's massive forepaws pinned his arms, while its hind legs straddled his torso. Zeka then delivered multiple rapid bites to Sergei's face and neck over approximately 15 seconds, tearing soft tissue and causing severe cervical trauma. Sergei's legs kicked frantically for several seconds before going limp. Death resulted from asphyxia, combined with catastrophic cervical spine injuries, not from a single static bite. The bear paused briefly between attacks, then re-engaged for a few more rapid bites before stepping back and pacing in a tight circle around the body, emitting low huffs and nudging Sergei's shoulder with its muzzle, a display of stressed, confused agitation. His friends had fled within seconds of the attack's onset. A neighbor's call to emergency services came through at 8:47 p.m., reporting terrible screams from the Volkov compound. Police arrived 12 minutes later, finding Zeka still hovering near the body. The bear showed no immediate aggression, but was dangerously agitated, requiring wildlife officials to tranquilize it before paramedics could approach. Sergei was pronounced dead at the scene at 9:15 p.m. The preliminary findings described catastrophic cranial facial destruction and massive thoracic trauma incompatible with life. The full forensic report would take weeks. Regional wildlife authorities euthanized Zeka the following morning after a mandatory examination, a procedural formality. Sergei's family, consulted after the fact, acquiesced to the state's inevitable decision. It ended a relationship that had lasted 6 years, but ultimately proved that wild instincts cannot be rewritten, only suppressed until a single, sparking moment of pain or fear. However, even as the Sergei's friends fled in terror, leaving their screams echoing through the neighborhood, in Yellowstone, a warehouse supervisor with a chest-mounted camera was about to discover that some carcasses come with guardians who don't negotiate. It was May 18, 2015, when the pristine meadows of Hayden Valley became a killing ground, where a warehouse supervisor's fatal overconfidence in reading animal behavior would be recorded in horrifying detail by his own camera. Caleb Rintoul had worked the same warehouse job in Boise for 16 years. The 44-year-old had developed an obsession with wildlife photography during weekend trips, convinced that his years of self-taught study and successful close-range encounters with elk and bison had given him a unique understanding of animal behavior, an expertise he mistakenly believed extended to apex predators. His friend Damon Kress, a soft-spoken accountant, watched nervously as Caleb repeatedly ignored posted safety distances throughout their visit. Caleb's chest-mounted GoPro had captured dozens of close encounters with elk, bison, and wolves during their stay, footage he planned to edit into a documentary proving that park rangers were overly cautious. His philosophy was simple. Animals telegraphed their intentions through body language, and anyone with common sense could avoid trouble by reading the signs. This confidence had led him to approach within 20 feet of grazing bison and follow wolf packs along hiking trails, behavior that made Damon increasingly uncomfortable, but which Caleb dismissed as necessary for authentic wildlife documentation. The morning sun cast long shadows across Hayden Valley's vast grasslands, where scattered stands of lodgepole pine created dark pockets of cover along the meandering Yellowstone River. Grizzly bears in Yellowstone can weigh up to 700 pounds and possess bite forces exceeding 1,200 pounds per square inch, with 4-inch claws designed for digging roots and tearing flesh. Female grizzlies with cubs are particularly dangerous, but even solitary bears become extremely aggressive when defending food sources, a behavior known as resource guarding that can trigger fatal attacks on humans who venture too close to carcasses or feeding sites. A bison carcass lay partially concealed behind a cluster of willows approximately 80 yards from the main road, its heavily decomposed form visible through gaps in the vegetation. The stench of decay was overpowering, hanging thick in the still air. Caleb's GoPro recorded their approach as he narrated his observations, noting the absence of visible scavengers and speculating that the carcass might be unguarded. Damon repeatedly urged retreat, pointing out fresh bear tracks in the mud. The camera's audio, competing with the background rush of the nearby river, clearly captured the rhythmic huffing sounds and sharp jaw popping that indicated an agitated grizzly nearby, warning signs that Caleb either failed to recognize or chose to ignore. As they moved within 50 yards of the carcass, the bear's vocalizations intensified, though the sound of the river made it difficult to pinpoint their exact source or distance. Damon grabbed Caleb's arm and insisted they leave immediately, but Caleb shook him off, determined to capture footage of the hidden predator. The GoPro recorded their whispered argument as they crouched behind a fallen log, with Caleb insisting that the bear would reveal itself if they remained patient and quiet. The grizzly sow erupted from the willows at a distance of roughly 30 yards with explosive speed, her massive 450-pound frame covering the distance to their position in less than 3 seconds. Caleb spun toward the charging bear, but stumbled backward over the log, his hands raised defensively as the predator closed the final yards. The GoPro captured his face in the moment of realization, eyes wide with terror as he understood that his confidence had been fatally misplaced. The bear's initial impact was a massive upward swat and single crushing bite to Caleb's upper right thigh, immediately severing the femoral artery. The attack lasted approximately 12 seconds, with brief moments of release between bites. Caleb's scream echoed across the valley as the bear's powerful jaws applied immense crushing pressure with a short, wrenching motion. The GoPro lens was partially obscured by blood and mud, showing only flashes of the struggle while audio conveyed most of the chaos. The sow's massive forepaws pinned Caleb's torso briefly, while her claws raked across his chest and abdomen, leaving deep gashes. Instead of dragging him toward the carcass, she swatted and pushed him away, maintaining distance from the bison while defending her food source. Blood continued to pour from the severed artery, forming a crimson trail across the meadow as Caleb's body went limp. The bear then positioned herself between Caleb's motionless form and the carcass, huffing and jaw-popping as she scanned for additional threats. Damon, who had fled during the initial attack, could be heard on the camera's audio calling desperately for help from his position behind a distant tree, before running toward the road to find a cell signal. The GoPro continued recording from where it had fallen, showing only partial glimpses of the bear and Caleb amid the grass. Damon's 911 call reached park dispatch at 10:23 a.m., but the remote location in Hayden Valley meant that emergency responders required over 25 minutes to reach the scene. By the time rangers arrived with medical equipment and bear deterrents, Caleb had been unconscious for several minutes, his body pale and still beneath the watchful gaze of the grizzly sow. Paramedics pronounced him dead at 10:51 a.m., noting that the massive blood loss from the severed femoral artery had made survival impossible even with immediate medical intervention. The preliminary findings documented severe trauma to the right leg and torso, with complete severance of the femoral artery, multiple puncture wounds consistent with large carnivore dentition, and significant tissue loss. The cause of death was listed as exsanguination due to arterial hemorrhage, with the final coroner's report to be completed at a later date. The GoPro footage, recovered by investigators, provided crucial evidence of the attack sequence and confirmed that Caleb had violated multiple park safety regulations by approaching within the minimum required distance of both the carcass and the defending bear. Damon was diagnosed with severe PTSD following the incident, with the recorded audio of the attack becoming a specific source of traumatic intrusion, and he never returned to Yellowstone, haunted by the memory of his friend's final moments and his own inability to prevent the tragedy that unfolded with such brutal efficiency in the valley's deceptive tranquility. Yet even as the Grizzly returned to guard its bison carcass in Yellowstone's valley, halfway across the world, in the remote forests of Russia's Far East, a delivery cyclist with a helmet camera was about to stumble into a nightmare where fleeing one apex predator would deliver him straight into the claws of another. It was September 14, 2018, when the remote forest roads of Primorsky Krai became the stage for a collision between man and apex predators that would be captured in terrifying detail by a helmet camera, documenting the final moments of a delivery cyclist. Anton Leonov had been delivering packages by bicycle through the rural villages of Russia's Far East for 3 years, a job that paid poorly but allowed him the freedom to explore the vast wilderness that stretched between settlements. The 28-year-old from Vladivostok had developed a modest YouTube following by filming his rides through some of the world's most remote terrain, his helmet-mounted camera capturing everything from abandoned Soviet installations to encounters with local wildlife. Anton's route that day took him along a network of logging roads that cut through dense taiga forest, a journey he had made dozens of times while delivering supplies to isolated research stations. Ussuri brown bears, the largest brown bear subspecies in Asia, can weigh up to 1,400 pounds and possess the strength to decapitate large prey with a single swipe of their massive paws. These apex predators share their territory with Siberian tigers, creating one of the few ecosystems on Earth where two of the world's most dangerous carnivores compete for the same resources, leading to heightened aggression and territorial behavior in both species. The helmet camera, with its limited battery life, had been recording intermittently throughout the afternoon. It recorded Anton's steady progress through increasingly dense forest, his breathing relaxed as he navigated familiar curves. Then, the camera captured his sudden intake of breath as he spotted movement ahead. A massive Siberian tiger crouched over a fresh deer kill just 40 yards from the road, its head snapping up to lock onto him. Anton froze for a critical second. The tiger's response was an immediate, deep-throated snarl and a defensive charge forward several yards, a clear warning to back away from its kill, before stopping abruptly. Anton's panicked reaction was immediate and catastrophic. Instead of slowly backing away, the sheer proximity of the charging predator likely triggered a blind flight reflex. His only vehicle was the bicycle, and in his terror, he spun it around and began pedaling frantically uphill, away from the tiger. The tiger did not pursue, instead holding its position near the kill, while Anton's flight set him on a collision course with another danger. Desperate to escape, Anton veered off the main road onto a steep, downhill trail. In his panic, Anton failed to notice that he was heading directly toward another predator's territory, an area where fresh bear sign should have warned him of the danger ahead. The collision occurred at 3:52 p.m. as Anton rounded a sharp bend at high speed and rode directly toward a massive Ussuri brown bear foraging along the trail. He struck the bear's hindquarters at an angle. The bicycle crumpled, and he was violently deflected sideways, his body slamming into the ground as the camera was torn from his helmet. The footage fragmented into a spinning blur of sky and forest floor and stopped recording footage, but still partly functional. The bear, startled by the sudden impact, responded immediately. It delivered a single, explosive backhand swipe with its right forepaw, striking Anton's left shoulder and upper chest as he tried to scramble to his feet. Deep lacerations opened across his torso, and blood loss began immediately. The bear pushed Anton away from its position rather than dragging him toward any carcass. Fragments of audio continued to record after the camera stopped, capturing wet, gurgling sounds as Anton struggled to breathe and the bear huffed and swayed over him. From a nearby ridge, a local forestry worker, collecting trail camera data, watched the scene unfold at a distance of roughly 150 yards. He reported seeing the bear standing over Anton, while the tiger observed from the edge of the clearing. The witness noted that the tiger did not engage the bear, instead crouching low and circling briefly before retreating when the bear held its ground. Realizing the severity of the situation and fearing for Anton's life, the forestry worker immediately retrieved his radio and called for emergency assistance, providing detailed coordinates and a description of both predators' positions, the injured man, and the surrounding terrain, all while keeping himself at a safe distance. Anton's breathing, already shallow, grew imperceptible. The camera recorded the final faint sounds of the forest before his body was still. The footage ended as the battery finally died. Anton was reported missing when he failed to return from his delivery route that evening, prompting a search operation that located his bicycle's GPS tracker signal after 4 hours. The forestry worker's earlier emergency call proved instrumental in guiding rangers quickly through the dense taiga, allowing them to pinpoint Anton's location. Rangers found his body at 11:30 p.m., using the last GPS ping to navigate through the forest. Both predators had departed, leaving behind clear evidence of the encounter. The preliminary coroner's findings documented catastrophic trauma and severe lacerations to the throat and chest, and massive blood loss. The cause of death was listed as exsanguination due to multiple arterial injuries, with a full report pending. Russian authorities released minimal information about the incident, noting only that a civilian had suffered a fatal wildlife encounter in a restricted forest area, a classification meant to avoid sensationalism and protect the rare predators from poaching or disturbance. Thanks for watching. If you liked these stories, click here.